ะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังกุณุตรังอุปัชฌายังนัมมาสามิ I'm going to start speaking in English, and after the English discourse, open it up for questions, and I can have either Thai or English questions. So, to begin with, I just want to talk about one of the main misunderstandings of Buddhism that come across quite a lot, and that's the idea that Buddhism says you shouldn't have any desires. Desires are bad, and that you should get rid of all your desires. And that's what enlightenment is all about. So there's some obvious objections to that. First, is that really possible? Surely not. Secondly, even if it were possible, why would you want to do that? It's not a very uplifting, inspiring goal for most people. So the answer to that is, well, actually the Buddha didn't teach that at all. What the Buddha taught was that human suffering, mental suffering, is the result of a lack of understanding, or a wrong understanding, misunderstanding of ourselves, our human nature, and the world we live in. So the Buddha rejected the idea of some divine punishment or test or plan, but said that we can discover all that we need to discover in our life by looking at ourselves. And the Buddha pointed out that whenever and in whatever situation, in whatever context, we don't have a clear or correct understanding of what's going on, then there will be one of three kinds of craving that manifest in the mind. So in other words, the expression of ignorance is craving. So you can't sort of point to something and say that's ignorance, but it's not a tangible thing that you can observe and recognize. But just as we can't see the wind, but we can see the leaves rustling in the trees. So those are the expression, the tangible expression of wind. The expression of ignorance is craving. And there are three kinds of craving. There's the craving for sense experience, sense pleasure. There's the craving for becoming, and the craving for getting rid of. So I'll explain those in some detail in a moment. But the Buddha asks us to look at what happens to ourselves, our well-being, our mental health, when this kind of craving takes hold of it. And what are the consequences of it for our life and for our relationship to the people around us and our relationship to the world we live in. So the Buddha said that these cravings and the ignorance on which they are based are not things we just have to put up with. We are, as human beings, blessed with the potential to see clearly the way things are, and thus to eliminate all craving. And through doing so, we realize the highest thing that a human being can realize: liberation, freedom, true happiness. Now, the Buddha said that there are also desires that arise from knowledge and understanding. So the Pali word for not understanding or wrong understanding, misunderstanding, is avijja. And the word for understanding is vijja. So in Pali language, whenever you have an A at the beginning of the word, it just negates what follows. It's the opposite. So it was that if you have a clear understanding of the way things are, that does not result in passivity or some kind of annihilation, but there are desires that arise from that clear knowledge. Let's give an example. You're walking along the road, you see someone fall over and hurt themselves, you rush over to help them. So you have that desire to help somebody who's suffering. That's not considered craving. That's a different kind of desire. It's not a desire based on ignorance. It's a desire based on knowledge and understanding. That person is in pain. Nobody wants to be in pain. We have the capacity to be able to help to reduce or alleviate that pain. We should do that if we can. So the Buddha used two different words to refer to desire. You have the word the desires, or what we call cravings in English, and when we do make a distinction, in Pali language that's called tanha. And then you have the wholesome desires, which are called chanda, or dhammachanda. So the Buddha's teaching is not that you want to get rid of all desires, because that's not possible, but you want to eliminate the unwholesome desires and cultivate the wholesome desires. So one teaching on the four paths to success was called the Iddhipadas, and that means either worldly success or spiritual success. The first quality, the first virtue that you need is chanda, this wholesome desire, this enthusiasm, this passion for the good and true. And whenever that kind of enthusiasm, interest, passion has been cultivated, then effort will flow from that naturally. And if that right motivation and right effort is sustained, the mind will attain focus, concentration, and be very effective in whatever it turns to. The Buddha also recommended that we develop a fourth quality, because your joy is in the work itself and in the quality of the work and the quality of mind that you bring to the work. You find joy in it. So in the worldly sense, the Buddhist, they say we're in the macroeconomic kind of view, then the idea is that human motivation is of two kinds. There's the wholesome and the unwholesome motivation, craving and chanda, and that there will always be, inevitably, a certain amount of the worldly, unwholesome, craving motivations at play in a capitalist economy, for sure, but that a healthy and sustainable economy, culture, is one which tries to, as far as possible, to channel energy from the craving channel to the wholesome channel. So as I say, this is not a renunciation or a falling short in material goals, but it's one in which the efforts towards material security and progress are integrated into a healthy spiritual approach to life. Now this same principle is applied to our spiritual practice. So as meditators, what's one of the main mistakes that meditators make? Or they allow their mind to become motivated by craving, meaning the results of meditation. So you have some idea of what you want from meditation. So you may call it peace or enlightenment or whatever, but the first reminder that we need to bring up regularly is you don't really know what that means. Okay, you're meditating in order to realize peace, but you don't know what peace is because you've never experienced it. And the mistake that many people make is to assume that peace is a kind of intense, profound relaxation. So when you meditate, or many people meditate, at the beginning, it's kind of a lot of thoughts, a lot of agitation, a lot of movement in the mind. And then if you persevere, that movement starts to decrease and become relaxed. And at that point, it's like you feel, wow, now I've made it. I've realized this peace, and you relax into the peace and you fall asleep. So there's this constant yo-yo, pendulum, going backwards and forth between agitation and dullness and sleepiness for many meditators. So why is that? Well, there are a number of contributory causes, but one of them is this misunderstanding of what peace is and assuming that relaxation is, the reward that you're receiving from your efforts. But the goal of meditation, or the heart of meditation, is this Buddha awareness, this clear, sharp, bright awareness. That's what we're cultivating. There was, when I was a young monk, friend, is actually a monk senior to myself, very, very frustrated with his meditation, and went to see our teacher, Ajahn Chah. He said, I'm so agitated, what can I do? And Ajahn Chah said, it's not a problem. When you're agitated, you know you're agitated, and when you're not agitated, you know you're not agitated. It took me quite a while to really understand what that meant. But Lumpur Cha was making this point that it's not necessarily the case that if there's movement in your mind that you don't know how to meditate or you're wasting your time, because it's the effort to sustain this clarity of mind, this sharpness of mind, which is the point. And sometimes it's easier in a way than when the mind hasn't so much going on within it, because it's so easy to become dull. And one of the reasons dullness is such a problem is that we're so overly stimulated in our lives these days. With modern technology, we have access to distraction and entertainment at every moment of our life. I mean, this is an unimaginable state of affairs if we compare it with most of human history. And so it means that our minds tend to become rather weak, because if you're feeling uncomfortable or bored or anxious or upset, now all you have to do is just take hold of your phone and you can be taken out of that. So in a way, I mean, it's an incredible thing, isn't it? To be able to let go of that kind of discomfort in a second or in a moment. But long-term consequences, you never develop that mental resilience and strength and clarity and ability to be with unpleasant mental states and learn how to handle them and manage them and learn how to protect your mind against them or to let them go when they develop. These are really essential life skills which are very much harder to develop now that we don't have to develop them. You know, part of the ethos of a monastic is you're putting yourself in a position where you can't run away from yourself. You have to face up to yourself in a way that in a lay life it's not the case. You as a monastic, you cut off all these avenues of distraction and escape in order to face up to this body and mind and this life as a human being. But because we're constantly receiving information and stimulation, we become addicted to it. It's just natural. That becomes our baseline. And so the only time that the mind is free of something or other is when we're about to sleep. So when the amount of thinking in the mind is reduced, then the immediate signal from the brain is it's time to go to sleep. So this is why when we're looking at meditation, we always have to see it in context of our whole life, because it's not like you have a problem that arises in meditation. It's a technical problem. There's a technical fix for it, and that there's some kind of magic bullet or some kind of special technique that great meditation masters know, and if they'll just be kind enough to tell you, then you can be free of all your meditation problems. Because what you're doing in meditation is you're looking at your mind and how your mind is these days, how your mind is right now. And what you're seeing is your whole life and your whole way you live your life being encapsulated in your experience during meditation. So meditation is another analogy would be like you're looking into a microscope. And of course, if you look at something with your naked eye, it appears in a certain way, and then you look in a microscope and you see all kinds of things that you're not able to see with your naked eye. And in daily life, there are all kinds of things in yourself and in your mind that you don't see. It's very difficult to see them, even if you're really determined to do so. But it's in meditation where you turn the focus on the mind, its body and mind itself, and you can see all kinds of things. And this is one of the most important functions of meditation. It's not like I'm meditating in order to become peaceful, in order to this, in order to that, and if I can do it, then I'm a good meditator, and if I'm not, I'm a bad meditator. What you should be using meditation as a way of exploring and learning about your life and learning how to understand the way things are. I'll give you a very simple example. in daily life, we often have pressures, work pressures. You have to suddenly find yourself, you've got a limited amount of time and you just got to go for it. And many people can do that for a certain period of time. You just put everything into it, so much effort. But it really stresses you out. And then after you've finished, what do? You say, I just want to lay back and relax. Do you want to meditate? No, I just want to relax. So you have these it's like two different poles of experience. You've got effort over here and relaxation over here. And they never sort of really meet up anywhere important. So one of the life skills that as a Buddhist we are interested in developing is relaxed effort. Being able to put consistent effort into any area of our life and not be stressed out and not go through this endless kind of process of hard work and then a reaction to it and laziness and then pushing yourself and then feeling guilty and then maybe getting it done a bit, then going back to the opposite extreme. And so we're so inconsistent in our efforts because we don't really able to find this integration or this balance of effort and relaxation. So is there a way we can learn this? Well, I would contend that meditation is very good for this, Buddhist meditation, because your body and your mind are an extremely effective and efficient feedback system. So what I mean by this is that if you're meditating and you're really going to try hard, okay, I'll go for it, and not going to let my mind go anywhere, I'm going to stay on my breath, something like this, what happens? Incredibly frustrating, and you get your breathing tends to become uneven, you get sort of feel of constriction, maybe you get a headache, and it's kind of miserable. And what's happening there is that your mind is giving you immediate feedback. Your mind is telling you that you're putting too much effort without any relaxation. Just be a little bit more relaxed, just come down a notch or two. Similarly, if you're meditating without any real sense of purpose, without any real effort involved, too relaxed, too sabai, then what happens? Either you fall asleep or you're off in a daydream. So if that's happening, then this is the body and the mind giving you feedback and telling you not enough effort, too much relaxation. So you give yourself a job, let's say, be mindful of the breath, and you see what happens. And if you're putting too much effort, then your mind tells you, you start to feel stressed and tensed. If you too little effort, mind won't stay on the object. So you're getting this information, you're getting this feedback, helping you to fine-tune your effort. And that skill that you develop in meditation is a skill that's applicable, that you can then apply in daily life. So there are many, say we have so many moods and emotions and in Buddhist what we say defilements arising in the mind. But until we start to meditate, it's all just kind of permutations of me. So, I felt really good this morning. I felt just really kind of happy and enthusiastic, and then I had a row with my boss, and now I feel really miserable and lost all my confidence, and then had a chat with a friend, and now I'm feeling a lot. So it's like me and my journey and my odyssey and me and my ups and downs. And that's just a normal and natural way to think about ourselves and our life, isn't it? But when we start to meditate, we get a whole new perspective. Because we give the mind a job, say, when I breathe in, know that I'm breathing in, breathe out, know that I'm breathing out, and see what happens. And when the mind wanders off, then we're aware of this is a distraction, this is a thought, this is a memory, this is a fantasy that's arisen in my mind. And I'm aware of it and I put it down. So you're aware of something that arises and passes away. So now, rather than this idea of I am like this, I was really feeling good in the morning and I got a bit depressed during the afternoon, but I feel a bit better in the evening, something like this. You say, this arose and it passed away, and that arose and it passed away, and this arose and it passed away. So we're beginning to see ourselves as process, as like a river of experience, rather than this singular autonomous me that does things and has things happen to me. And again, this is so valuable. And so we're not talking about getting to any really profound level of calm and insight, but simply being aware that every aspect, everything that goes to make up our life, our body, our feelings, our thoughts, our emotions, our memories, and so on, are all in a constant state of flux. And that there's nobody standing behind it. It's like the owner of experience or the manipulator of experience. It's just a flow, but it's not a random flow. It's a flow that proceeds according to causes and conditions which can be recognized. Now we're living in a world a world of change. So the world, it's not only the world is changing, but the world is changed. I mean, that's what the world is. It's just change. But over the past years, it really feels that the speed of change, the velocity of change, is accelerating. And so it's accelerating in ways that nobody can forecast, nobody can be really confident about. Even the smartest people, the people who have the greatest knowledge, whenever they make predictions, they're as often likely to be wrong as they are to be right. It's just such a complex web of causes and conditions, but it's changing so fast. So how do you feel as a human being in the face of it? Makes you feel insecure and anxious, doesn't it? And so in a time of intense, rapid change, when everybody feels in sort of everything's unstable and unpredictable and unreliable, then one reaction to that is just to grasp onto something. And this is where fundamentalist religion tends to grow in times of rapid change, because it's saying, yeah, all this is changing, but you just hold on to this, and this will keep you safe. So the idea that certain beliefs or dogmas can keep you safe and grounded in the midst of change. This is a very popular idea. It's probably one of the most popular ideas ever in the history of the human race. The other idea is for usually younger people. Just the idea of change is exhilarating. You know, wow, let's just throw out all the old stuff, and it's all past its expiry date, and none of it was ever any good in the first place. These old folks, they've just made a mess of everything. Let's change everything. So this kind of like embracing change, and just like the word change is like in itself is considered to be like a positive thing. So let's just like surf this wave of change. So these are kind of like knee-jerk, immediate reactions to change, but they're based upon this idea of me in a world of change. me being threatened by change, or me being carried along by change. But the wrong view at the heart of it, and why it always ends in tears, is because it's based upon ignorance, a lack of understanding. So coming back to meditation, when you see that you yourself are change, the closer you look at yourself, the moment you, what happens when you meditate on your breath? Well, before long, you don't have any sense of, I am this person, with this name, with this personal history, with this personality. Goes out the window. You're with the real world. So people use that phrase, in all kinds of ways. But I would say the real world is what you experience directly when you just let go of all distractions and memory and anticipation. What's right here now? This is the real world. You don't even have a sense of yourself as being male or female, or gender, of identity in any way. What you do see, the closer you look, the clearer your vision, the more you're aware of this flow of change. So in terms of the relationship to external change, as long as you believe, you have this superstitious belief in this permanent entity called me, who has all these challenges and things to deal with, then you're always going to feel some level of discomfort and suffering. But when you see it's not a matter of me in a world of change, it's an inner world of change and an outer world of change. And there's a harmony, it's just different kinds of change. There's no important or relevant distinction. So these are the kind of ideas, the way that your thinking and your understanding of what life is, your values, start to change as you meditate. And I'm talking about meditating within the context of the Eightfold Path, meaning that you're also developing and practicing generosity and kindness and compassion. You are accepting and training yourself to live within boundaries, the way that you act and the way that you speak to the people around you. And you're learning to look and to learn from experience. So meditation is practice is one part of this. But it's not simply that if you become very peaceful and calm, then that's it. You're meditating correctly. Now you've got it down. You're a good meditator. But if you understand meditation, it's a gradual process by which you are changing within, changing yourself, your understanding of life, the way that you relate to other people. So many things but it's incremental. What I mean by that is that when people try to assess meditation, they say, "Oh, I want to be up there and I'm still down here." But if you're looking at simply incremental changes in the quality of your life, and you start to observe, through meditation, through practice, I'm a little bit kinder, I'm a little bit more patient, I'm a little bit more compassionate, I'm a little bit more mindful. This is the kinds of changes that you can see, tangible changes in the quality of your life, the quality of your relations with people around you. But it's a matter of being observant. And I think if there's any real fault I find in meditators, and not just in lay meditators, but monastics as well, not really taking their experience of meditation and reviewing it, and really asking, what does that really mean for my life? And I give you so many examples. Like if you're more, let's say, more intellectual, more cerebral, your mind going on in your head a lot more, then you tend to identify, you tend to think, this is who I am. this is what makes me special. You know, I'm smart, or I'm intelligent. And you identify with thinking. But simple question. Can you tell me what you'll be thinking in 5 minutes' time? No, I can't. What about 5 seconds' time? What about 1 second? What's your next thought going to be? Nobody knows. Even your next thought, you have no idea what it's going to be. You can make some pretty likely to be something on this lines because you've been thinking about this for the past, on and off for the past minute or two. But you know, suddenly a thought from, I don't know where it comes from, just pops into your mind at any time. And so here we can see what that means about the selflessness of thought. It's not something you have any control over. You're not the owner of thoughts. You can't just decide to think or not think about something. So when you observe, let's say you're being mindful in meditation, and then suddenly out of nowhere, this really nasty thought comes into your mind. You know, something really horrible or really shameful. Wow, where does that come from? You know, and the thing is that our minds, it's like a room with all the windows and all the doors open. You know, anything can come into that room. You know, it could be an arahant, and it could be a poisonous snake. If the windows and doors are open, anything can come in. And that's what our minds are like. You know, we can't guarantee that none of those things won't come into your mind. So when you see, so what do you conclude from that? One of the things you conclude is, in meditation, you're learning not only about yourself and your own mind, you're learning about humanity. You're the guinea pig. But greed, anger, hatred, jealousy, kindness, compassion, patience, whatever you observe in your mind, that's not like specific to you, is it? It's the human quality of patience. It's the human quality of kindness. It's the human quality of anger. So you are learning all of these essential components of being a human being very directly. You're not learning about them as a theory or as a philosophy, but you're looking at them right. And so if you understand how anger works, its nature in yourself, you understand everybody else in the world. Because the things that make everybody angry are different, but the anger itself is the same. We compare with people at the time of the Buddha, the things that made them greedy, the things that they desired might be different, but the human experience of greed and desire has not changed and never will change as long as there are human beings. So if we really want to understand the human condition, why do people do the things they do? How can we make the world a better place? Well, we have to understand the human condition, not as a philosophy, but by looking at it. And we look at our own experience. So if you have, so you're there and suddenly like an angry thought came into your mind. And you think, yeah, that's how it must be for everyone. It's not like, you know, maybe someone's just sitting there and suddenly an angry thought comes into your mind. And if you lack mindfulness right there, you'll just follow it. And we see that we can develop an ability where, like an angry thought or a greedy thought, something comes up, and if our mindfulness is strong enough, then we recognize it. And we don't grasp onto it, and we don't try and push it away, we recognize it. And recognizing it, it passes away, because we're not feeding it. And then we can have the observation, wow, that's so cool, and you can do that, you know, and that's something that you can train yourself to do, but it's really difficult to do it on a consistent basis, and so it's difficult for me, who's a meditator and who's really trying to develop this as a skill.
how much more so for people who've never meditated, never have any kind of idea about this? How could you expect people to be free from anger and prejudice and all these things, because nobody's even trying to do the work of looking within and understanding how the mind works and how to deal with the mind. So you feel great compassion for human beings, and that sense of frustration and disappointment and depression and anger about the way people behave in the world, it starts to fall away, because it's like this. Because if people lack that clarity of mind and mindfulness, when these triggers trigger these unwholesome mental states, people just fall for it. They have no defenses, they have no perspective. How could it be any way else? So these are kind of thoughts and reflections that come up when you're examining and evaluating your meditation. So many life skills, so many insights. I think I've been talking a bit too long, but just one more, a very important one, is that if your mind does put down all its attachment and interest and fascination with memories and perceptions and thoughts, and the mind and mindfulness becomes stabilized. Now, when your mindfulness becomes stable, as to say, it's not interrupted, and you have this uninterrupted flow of mindfulness, then certain things happen. The mind there's a very deep sense of well-being and clarity and peace, and this is what we call samadhi. The mind's very stable and clear and bright and happy. Now, when the mind becomes calm in that way, the joy and the bliss that can arise is quite startling. And if we withdraw from that at the end of the meditation, then we can compare it. That joy that didn't come from getting something, enjoying something, adding something to what we got already. It was the joy of simply removing all the things that we've sort of plastered on top of the mind, and all the unnecessary stuff and all the defilement. So it's like chipping away, what's concealing the purity of the heart. And it's such a beautiful and sublime experience. And then when we compare it to the pleasures that we get through this eyes, ears, lungs, it's no question, this is so superior. And so, in the question, well, how do you give up addictive behaviors? And how do you, this isn't right, it's too much, but it's just, you can't let it go. And why? Why is that? Even though it's not good for my health, or I'm destroying my relationship with the people around me with all these sensual addictions, pleasures, it's because you have no alternative, or because you don't really believe that there's an alternative, you see. So the underlying sort of belief for most people is something is better than nothing. Whatever that something might be, no matter how unsatisfactory, it's better than nothing at all. And the assumption is, if you don't have these kinds of addictions in your life, even though they're quite destructive and they're not giving you the kind of happiness that you hope for, it's better than nothing. And that's why really smart people get addicted to sensual pleasures, because of this assumption or this belief that something is better than nothing. So how do you deal with that? Well, the way you deal with it is developing samadhi, and then you prove for yourself there is an alternative. There is a happiness and a contentment which is only experienced by putting down those addictions, and it's so much superior. So seeing this has all kinds of consequences from the way that you behave, the way you treat other people, your value system, the things you aspire to in life. All these things change because of this experience of profound inner peace, and bringing that experience to bear and to compare it, to evaluate your everyday experience. So as we are approaching the very important day, the Visakha Puja day, in a few days, the day of the Buddha's birth and his enlightenment, his death, I just want to talk about, meditation and this whole practice, spiritual cultivation, maybe from a slightly different angle. I say I'm hardly talked at all about specific techniques, but the approach and the attitude and learning from the experiences in meditation, and not letting the mind be carried away by craving for results and then frustrated when you don't get the results, but looking at the process itself, taking joy in the process and learning from the process. And there's one final point, there's a phrase that we're familiar with now is lifetime learning. It's a very good thing. But I would say that this originated with the Buddha. And the support for that argument is that the Buddha referred to arahants, fully enlightened beings, as aseka pugala. And aseka pugala means graduate, one who doesn't need to study anymore, doesn't need to train anymore. And meaning everyone except for arahants still has work that needs to be done, still needs to study, still needs to learn, still needs to train. So this is the idea we have as Buddhists. We are people. We're in training, and we're learners. We're learning about what it means to be a human being, and that it's through learning that we truly express our humanity. So this is the talk I would like to offer you this afternoon. So now we have some time for questions and answers. Questions และคำตอบคำถามและ answers คือ2ภาษา two languages. So you can ask in Thai or in English, and you can ask me and I can answer in either language. มีไหมมีใครอยากถามอะไรหรือว่าหมดคำถามตั้งแต่ Yeah.
Humility and integrity can seem a bit like opposites. How do they come together on the Buddhist path?
Humility and integrity. I don't see any conflict myself. I mean, the integrity means that you have a standard conduct, and you sustain that, and you make sacrifices for it, and you're able to be loyal to it through thick and thin. So humility doesn't seem to me to be connected with that. It's interesting, in Buddhism, we talk about 3 kinds of conceit. Okay, so that's like a defilement. So the one that everyone's familiar with is like someone who thinks they're better than everyone else. It's puffed up and proud. It's like this is the first kind of conceit. But the Buddha says that's just one kind of conceit. And if you think that little old me, I'm nothing, and they're so much better than me, and so what would often be praised as humility in Buddhism is considered a kind of conceit, because it's a sense of self. It's like me, who I am, I'm sort of low and you're high. You're better than me. So that's also a mistaken understanding. But the third kind of conceit is the one which is most difficult for people these days, and that's that we're all the same, we're all equal. No one's better than anybody else. Who are you to tell me what to do? We're all equal. That's the third kind of conceit. So that's kind of the democratic conceit, So, but anything that's coming from a sense of self, whether you think you're up there or you're down there or you're on the same level, that's a problem. That's a hindrance to Buddhist practice. So genuine humility, what's that? It's I think it's when you're not assuming yourself to be anything at all. So if you're genuinely humble, let's say you're in a group. Let's say we all have different skills. Okay, so let's say it's time to give a public talk. Okay, I'll let Ajahn Jayasaro do that. He talks a lot. He can do that. But then let's go and sort of do something practical, or build a hut in the forest. And I say, well, I think this venerable here is the person to be our leader, because he's so skilled at things like that, And so it's not like I have to be the leader, If I have this particular skills, then I'm going to come forward and say, yeah, I can offer my skills here. But I'm going to say, we're going into the forest, and because I'm the senior one, I'm going to decide, how this building project's going to go, because I'm hopeless. I'm notorious in Buddhist monastic order for being absolutely incompetent at building. So I would ask one of my friends to do that. And then this is, for me, is the idea. So I'm not saying I'm a humble person, but I'm giving an example of that. It's like, what needs to be done right here and now, and who's going to be the leader? So in certain areas, that person can be the leader, and in certain areas, that person can be the leader. So there's no fixed idea of who I am and who I should, and you should respect me, or you should look at me in this way, and we should all behave towards each other. But this idea of what needs to be done right now, and who's got the skills and the ability. That's how I see humility, rather than it's like in Thai language. We have this word ยกตนข่มท่านใช่ไหมมีใครแปลภาษาอังกฤษได้ไหมยกตนข่มท่าน Yeah, but it's like more that, isn't it? It's like lifting yourself up by putting others down. Yeah, ยกตน means lifting yourself up, ข่มตน putting others. But the opposite is the same. Some people is like ข่มตน ยกท่าน See, it's like, look, in a monastery, like if you have a great ajahn or someone we really look up to, So the mistake is to say, oh, he's so wonderful, he's so inspiring, and little old me, I'm so full of defilements, I'm hopeless. No, that's completely mistaken, because and this is why, like Ajahn Chah, Luang Por Chah, whenever he talked about himself in the past, he would never talk about his good qualities. He always talk about his mistakes and his weaknesses, because he wanted everyone to know, when I was your age, I was no different from you. It's not like I'm a special human being and I've been pure as the driven snow since I was a child. I got to where I am through following the Buddha's teaching, and if you'd follow the Buddha's teaching, you could do the same. So this is how, like good teachers, I think this is a mark of a good teacher, is like he empowers his disciples. I'm just showing you the way. I'm not some special being, And if a teacher is someone who really wants you to look up to them as being special, then I would say be careful around people like that, whether it's monks or nuns or anybody. Yeah. You got another question? Maybe we can alternate. We come time ภาษาไทยไหม ภาษาไทย
ภาษาไทยนะคะเวลายกครูบาอาจารย์สูงไปอะค่ะเหมือนกับว่าท่านทำผิดไม่ได้เราเหมือนกับท่านไม่ใช่คุณแม่หมออะไรพอท่านทำผิดคนก็จะผิดหวังรู้สึกว่าไม่ใช่ท่านต้องไม่ทำอย่างนั้น
ใช่อันนี้เป็นเรื่องสำคัญข้อที่หนึ่งพุทธองค์ทรงตำหนิการตั้งศรัทธาเฉพาะบุคคลพุทธองค์ก็ต้องการให้เราปลูกฝังศรัทธาในสงฆ์ไม่ใช่ครูบาอาจารย์รูปนั้นรูปนี้ทีนี้ก็เป็นเรื่องธรรมดานะถ้าเราในขณะเดียวกันก็ต้องยอมรับว่าจะมีครูบาอาจารย์ที่อบรมสั่งสอนแล้วเราก็ฟังธรรมะของท่านหรือสั่งสอนเราก็รู้สึกชีวิตเราดีขึ้นแล้วก็ได้ประโยชน์ก็ต้องมีความรู้สึกในบุญคุณของท่านและต้องรักท่านเคารพท่านอันนี้ก็เป็นเรื่องธรรมชาติธรรมดาก็ไม่ผิดอะไรแต่ในขณะเดียวกันเราก็ต้องระวังก็คืออย่าให้มันเป็นผูกพันกับองค์ใดองค์หนึ่งมากเกินไปเพราะถ้าองค์นั้นเกิดมีเรื่องเช้าอย่างที่เมืองไทยเร็วๆนี้นะหรือว่ามีท่านมรณภาพไปหรือมีอะไรไปศรัทธาของเราก็พังไปเลยทีนี้เราก็ถือว่าครูบาอาจารย์เป็นภาชนะของความดีภาชนะของคุณธรรมแต่ถ้าภาชนะแตกคุณธรรมที่อยู่ในภาชนะนี้มันก็ยังดีเหมือนเดิมเพียงแต่สิ่งที่เสียหายกับภาชนะไม่ใช่สิ่งที่เราเห็นในท่านหรือว่าสิ่งที่อาจจะเคยมีในท่านหรือที่เราอุปทานว่ามีในท่านดังอย่างในสายวัดประพงษ์นะเวลาเราไปสร้างวัดเราจะไม่ให้พระไปองค์เดียวต้องไป2 รูปหรือ3 รูปขึ้นไปเพื่อไม่ให้โยมแบบยึดติดในครูบาอาจารย์องค์ใดองค์หนึ่งจนเกินไป
Maybe I'll just translate that because I think it's quite an interesting point. I'm talking about the Buddha made it very clear that it wasn't wise to put all your faith in particular individuals. He wanted Buddhists to put their faith in the Sangha as a whole, the Sangha of enlightened beings, and that the problem about putting too much faith in an individual monk is that sometimes those monks turn out to be corrupt, or they disrobe, or maybe it's just simply that they pass away. And if all your faith is just focused on one person, it's a very unstable faith, and it can easily turn into a deep disappointment and pain if anything happens to that particular monk or teacher or nun or wherever it might be. And so the idea but having said that, it's just natural and normal. You have a teacher who's taught you, and you've changed so much, you've learned so much, you've grown so much because of one particular teacher. And some teachers are very charismatic, and it's just natural that there is that kind of personal feeling. You can't, the idea of a Sangha is one thing, but our way into the Sangha is usually through individuals. So, but that has to be put within the context of Sangha. And when I was, one of the most inspiring things, when I was an Anagarika, like Albi, and I'd been an Anagarika at Wat Pah Pong for a month. So this was New Year's Day, 1979. And so there was New Year's Eve, 1978, excuse me. And so the sala, the Dhamma hall was packed with monks, and the Dhamma hall was packed, and there were people outside. It was just a huge thing, and and there had been chanting and meditation and the Dhamma talk, and at midnight there would be some chanting. We still do that to this day, this kind of thing. And what I appreciated was Ajahn Chah was just sat in the middle of the Sangha. Okay, he had a slightly higher seat than everybody else, something like that. But basically he was in the midst of the Sangha. And because we all dress in exactly the same way, you know, it's not like the teacher has a special hat or something like that, you know, it's like exactly the same. And then just like about 11:45 at night, there was a monk sort of, you see something's going on, what's going on? This monk sort of crawls through the, excuse me, and then whispers something in Ajahn Chah's ear. Ajahn Chah immediately got up and he starts saying, do this, do that, and then makes another space. And then shortly after, an elderly monk, and so Ajahn Chah even, you know, he was getting on, but the way he wore his robes was so immaculate, and the way that he bowed and everything. And so kind of, you had this kind of comparison with other monks. So this monk came in and he was you know, he was the same kind of age, but his robe was a bit kind of, you know, and he just didn't look really inspiring to me as a young person. But he sat down on Ajahn Chah's seat, and Ajahn Chah and the whole Sangha bowed to him. So this, for those of you who come to monasteries, you probably, well, yeah, that's normal. But for me to see, here was like, he's like the king, you know, Ajahn Chah's the king, you know, surrounded by all his disciples, monks and lay people. It's like the time of the Buddha. And yet a monk comes who's been a monk more years than him, so senior to him, and he immediately just throws that all away and invites this monk to sit there, and he bows to him because he's been a monk a couple of years longer. So for me, this was such a teaching about what it means to be like a leader and a great monk and a great teacher, that there wasn't that kind of identification with it, and it was like the Vinaya comes first, and the way of relating to each other that the Buddha laid down is sacrosanct. That's far more important than his position at the center of attention for everybody. So the great monks, great teachers, they're saying they're like vessels. You know, why somebody is so inspired like Ajahn Chah is because within him you just see compassion so clearly. You see loving kindness so clearly. You see integrity so clearly. You see humility so clearly. All these virtues, they're embodied in somebody. They're expressed in them so clearly and so beautifully. And that's what you respond to. But when that vessel, that human being, passes away, then those qualities that don't pass away with them, you know, the loving kindness and the compassion, you've just been fortunate enough to see them so clearly in the life of that person. But those qualities are still there, and they're in you as well, in every one of you as well. Obviously not in any way as well developed, but the potential for them is in you as much as in Ajahn Chah. Pasatai.
Yeah, I speak English.
Go ahead.
Yes, I was wondering if you believe we're going kind of, or already have gone into a new age, this like astrological, the age of Aquarius instead of the age of Pisces. And in that case, how do you feel like Buddhism fits into this new age, age of individuality instead of like a group, like a school, and like where people are kind of like decentralized together with each other instead of this centralized system.
Yeah, I'm not so familiar with that kind of interpretation and way of looking at human history or the history of the world, and as age of Pisces and age of Aquarius. You know, that's a particular kind of interpretation or projection onto the world. I'm not sure how useful it is. I mean, I think it's, you know, when in those kind of big generalizations, there are so many exceptions to them, and you know, we're living in a world of change, and the causes and conditions for it are very complex. And I would say, what's, you know, rather than being in the age of Aquarius, age of Pisces, I would say, you know, technologies, you know, from, you know, we've seen from laptops and personal computers, mobile telephones, and now, you know, a generative AI in the last few months. And these things are having huge effects on human consciousness. And there's things that we can see and talk about and deal with. But this big sort of overarching ideas of age of Aquarius, age of Pisces, that doesn't seem to me a very useful template for understanding life and how we should live our life. But you may have studied these things, so I haven't really, I'm a Buddhist monk and I haven't really studied that so much. You know. All I can remember was when I was a teenager and seeing now's the age of Aquarius, and that's about as much as I. ความอะไรนะความเชื่อกับความเชื่อแยกกับอะไรความจริงค่ะความจริงโอ้เป็นคำถามที่ดีมากพุทธเจ้าได้ท่านสอนเรื่องนี้เนี่ยอย่างที่ไม่เคยมีที่ไหนมาก่อนคือพระพุทธเจ้ายกข้อสังเกตว่ามนุษย์สามารถเชื่อ 100% ในสิ่งที่เป็นไม่เป็นจริงใช่ไหมเราปฏิเสธไม่ได้แม้แต่คนที่แบบเชื่อมั่นในศาสนาคริสต์อิสลามเขาก็ต้องยอมรับว่าอย่างน้อยคนที่อย่างชาวคริสต์ก็ต้องยอมรับว่าชาวอิสลามเชื่อมั่น 100% ในสิ่งที่ไม่เป็นจริงชาวอิสลามก็คงจะพูดเหมือนกันว่าชาวคริสต์เชื่อ 100% ในสิ่งที่ไม่เป็นจริงคือความเชื่อเนี่ยมันก็ไม่มีปัญหาเชื่อจริงๆแต่เราสังเกตได้ว่ามนุษย์สามารถเชื่อในสิ่งที่ไม่เป็นจริงโอเคนี่ก็ข้อแรกยอมรับใช่ไหมทีนี้ข้อต่อไปเพราะฉะนั้นความเชื่อไม่ใช่เครื่องพิสูจน์ว่าสิ่งที่เชื่อต้องจริงเสมอไปนะในโลกในอารยธรรมตะวันตกจะไม่เข้าใจในเรื่องนี้ส่วนใหญ่ก็จะมีความเชื่อที่เป็นวงกลมเขาเรียกว่า circular reasoning คือทำไมจึงเชื่อเพราะมันจริงเรารู้ได้ยังไงว่ามันจริงเพราะฉันเชื่อเอาเชื่อทำไมเพราะมันจริงทำไมเพราะมันเชื่อมันอย่างนี้นะแล้วมันจะแยกยังไงจะทำด้วยกันก็เนี่ยอย่างที่พูดว่าเชื่อก็ไม่ใช่ว่าเพราะเชื่อต้องจริงแต่ถามว่าเอารู้ได้ยังไงอ่านหน้าแรกเลยรู้เลยว่าจริงฟังตั้งแต่ครั้งแรกนี่รู้อันนี้ไม่ใช่รู้อันนั้นคือเชื่อมันคนละเรื่องรู้ก็คือรู้เป็นประสบการณ์จริงเชื่อก็เชื่อจะจริงก็ได้ไม่จริงก็ได้เห็นไหมแต่เชื่อไม่ใช่รู้อันนี้ก็คือความโมน้อมถ่อมตนของชาวพุทธแต่ที่มันเทียงกันคากันอะไรเพราะว่าไม่เข้าใจในเรื่องนี้ฉันเชื่อเนี่ยเพราะฉันเชื่ออย่างนี้มันต้องจริงแน่ๆเพราะถ้าไม่จริงแน่ๆมันไม่ได้เชื่อขนาดนี้เนี่ยนี่โลกมันวุ่นวายเพราะความคิดอย่างนี้แต่ชาวพุทธว่าไม่ใช่เชื่อก็จริงแต่ว่ามันอาจจะไม่จริงก็ได้นะอย่างเช่นอาตมาเนี่ยเด็กๆสารภาพเชื่อ 100% ในซานตาคลอสนะเชื่อไม่มีสงสัยเลยนะตอนหลังก็ผิดหวัง I'll translate that for you. So very good question. He said, what's the distinction? How do you make a distinction between truth and belief? Or what's the relationship between them? And I said there's there's a wonderful teaching in the Majjhima Nikaya, in the suttas, in which the Buddha makes it's like a revolutionary sutta statement. The Buddha says, it is possible, is it not, to believe, like 100, he didn't say 100%, but believe absolutely in something that's not true. Would you all accept that? That it's possible to have an absolutely unshakable belief in something that's not true. I think there's no way you can really argue against that, given that there are so many conflicting belief systems in the world. So let's say someone's absolutely convinced that Christianity is true, someone else is absolutely convinced that Islam is true. So as someone who's neither a Buddhist or neither a Christian or is a Muslim, what conclusions can you draw? Either the Christian is right and the Muslim is wrong, or the Muslim is right and the Christian is wrong, or they're both wrong. They can't both be right because these are conflicting beliefs. So I think that the conclusion here is that human beings can believe wholeheartedly, 100% in things which are not true. Therefore, absolute, unshakable belief is not a proof that what you believe is necessarily true. And I would say this is one of the weak points, or something that's caused untold suffering in the Western world over the past 2,000 years. Because people are saying, it's true. And you say, well, how do you know it's true? It's because I believe. And he said, well, why do you believe? Because it's true. It's true because I believe it because it's true. So it's this circular reasoning. And that's what leads to prejudice and conflict and religious wars, because people think that it must be true, because I wouldn't have this feeling. I wouldn't have this absolutely unshakable feeling if it wasn't true. So the idea that your emotion, your belief, is a proof of the truth of what you believe is one of the most tragic, mistaken ideas in Western history, I would say. So the Buddha is saying that you can believe in something, but always you care for the truth by saying, I don't really know this yet, but I believe it, and I believe it for this reason. But nevertheless, I acknowledge that I don't actually know it, so I could be wrong. So that's the Buddhist attitude.
May I ask the most vulnerable? This is probably because I'm still not good at English. Please make a distinction between truth and fact.
Truth and fact.
Especially Thai people, it's hard for.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm clear about that one. Like Kote Jin, no? Kote Jin, the Kwam Jin. Well, I think one of the most frightening statements ever made was made by an American woman who was in the American government a few years ago, where she was accused, or government was accused of lying, and she was presented with a whole range of facts to prove that what they were saying was not true. And she said she wouldn't accept that they lie. She said, well, we have alternative set of facts. So the idea that that there are these neutral facts, And this is the kind of the liberal idea, like for 100 years or forever. Like, if we can just get down to the facts and agree on the facts, then we can resolve our differences and our conflicts. But this is the idea now that you choose your facts. And if you don't like your facts, I'll have my facts. And so the idea of a common ground of fact as a basis for discussion, that's under threat now in the modern world. So it's a difficult question to answer, depend on the definition of fact, but also facts themselves, they're within a context. So if we take the Buddhist idea of truth, then we talk about two levels of truth. So there's the absolute natural level of truth, and there are like truths that we create. This is the human genius, that we create a second level of truth. And that's why we've developed so much as a species, because we can do that. For instance, let's say money. You can take a bill, a piece of paper or cloth with a picture on it and a number on it, and then you can exchange it for goods and services, because we all agree this is worth a certain amount of money. So that's not a natural truth, is it? It's an agreed truth. So we have natural truths and agreed truths, and because we are so good at developing these agreed truths, we have the modern financial system and all the things that we develop. But the problem is when you confuse the two, and you think that agreed truths are absolute truths. To agree truths, you have to know time and place, and when they're appropriate and when they're not appropriate. So, you can't be on that absolute level of truth all the time. So when we were coming into the monastery, like Ajahn Congress saying, it's like, so that land there, that's not ours, and this is ours, that's not ours, this is ours. So that's like the agreed level of truth. But if it was like absolute level of truth, that's not ours, and this is not ours, and that's not ours. Nothing is ours. You can't have a conversation like that. So you have to know what level of truth that you're relating on.
First of all, thanks for coming again. Very grateful and thankful that you're coming once more to Norway in a short period of time. So it's great, and I think it's quite inspiring to see how you answer questions as well. As I remember from last time you were here, there's a question from one of the Thai ladies about somebody attacking your family and what was bad karma and all. And that was very elegantly answered, and I think also the way you answered the question here about, I don't know what the Aquarius, those kind of things were, but you're quite direct, so which is very good, because that enables development of thought, like we were yesterday in the gathering there as well. But at the same time, you can afterwards say, well, I don't know anything about this, which is really great, because sometimes things get too fluffy, so you don't get a real answer. Or other times you get too direct, and then people get offended. So I think that's great.
Did you think I was too direct yesterday?
No.
No, I'm interested to know, because
I love the directness, but I think people, if people have a view, right?
Yeah.
They identify themselves with that view. It's Tanha, Vibhava Tanha, and then people, if you criticize that view, they get offended. But then if you don't agree, then there's no way out, right? So I think it's a very elegant way of kind of being honest and then saying afterwards, well, I'm not the next to it, right? I think it's a good way of kind of dealing with that. And so I had a question. I might have misunderstood you, but I think the way I heard, the experience of samadhi, which can be definitely life changing, and really leave seeds or change the seeds forever. At the same time, I think from my experience at least, there's flow and there goes waves. Sometimes my priming or my routines are very tight, and sometimes they're a little bit looser. And then the question is, you know, like, when they're looser and you want to get them tighter, it's to me at least, it's not always the case. That you've experienced samadhi, you know, then you know there's this bliss, enormous bliss that, to me at least, it doesn't mean that you cannot kind of not be as tight as you want to be sometimes, right, on your practice and your stuff. So I mean, like when people ask me about meditation, I don't teach meditation, but I mean, one of the things I tell them is that, you know, if you meditate, try to think how you feel before and after. You get a positive feedback loop, right? So I'm trying to, you know, is there any advice on hacks to kind of pick yourself up in the collar and, you know, you want to tighten things up even more?
Yeah, I make a slight. What the point I was making in the talk was that the just reflecting on the experience of samadhi and what the implications for your values and your goals in life and how you the priorities that you have in life. So I think that often meditators in Buddhist, so we talk about like samatha and vipassana, and people say, oh, that's just samatha, that's just, but I think that's a simplistic and not such a helpful distinction to make, in the sense that we can learn so much. This was the point I'm making. I didn't even get into this, like vipassana meditation, all that side of things. Simply the experience of samadhi and what that means, you know, when you really think about it, what that means for how you live your life in the world. I think your point is more about motivation, and the fact that even though you have experienced some samadhi, doesn't necessarily mean that you're sort of fired up to meditate all the time, or that you never get lazy or neglect it. And that's something that I've seen so many times. I'm just reminded of when I was a young monk. There was we used to have a lot of like teenage novices around in those days, and one of the teenage novices that came to our monastery, his mother was very devout, and she like missed her son, and so she asked if she could come and stay in the monastery and meditate, and she just took to meditation, you know, just like a duck to water, and she was having really deep meditation experiences, and to make some of the monks think, well, no, this lady just come out the rice fields in like in a week, and she's like, you know, we've been here for 5 years, but then and she just, you know, she was just so inspiring, and then one day she just came to see the abbot, and she said, I'd like to go home, I'm leaving today. And she said, why? I feel a bit homesick, want to go back to the fields and the water buffaloes. And so she had this like incredible experience, but that was it, you know. Well, you know, I've done that, you know, now I'll go back to my real life, you know. So it doesn't necessarily follow. So this is why you have to have like a consistent schedule, basically, which is irrespective of whether your meditation is going well or going badly. And this is the value for monks, I would say. It's like the bell goes at 3 o'clock and you've got a meditation at 3:30, and whether you know you want to or you don't want to, that's it. That's what you do. And of course that's the most difficult thing as a layperson, where you have that much more freedom to, you know, whether or not you don't have that kind of peer pressure to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. But I think that yeah, I don't know that I have any real hacks, except to that, you know, what you're doing, what you're already recommending, you know, to see the beneficial effects, and also that whatever we have achieved through meditation is unstable, unreliable, and can disappear, basically. Unless you reach that level of stream entry, then you can get a sickness, or you can have some really bad life experiences, relationships or things, and suddenly what you really thought was like part of you and something you've gained, and it's like, this is me now, it's not, and it's just disappeared. So that kind of reflection, that this is not yet really integrated, and that even the insights and the experiences, they can be wiped out until you reach that level of that. That's why stream entry is so important, because that's when you can't regress anymore. But it's like, as a lay person or as any unenlightened meditator, no matter how skilled or experienced, it's like you're still in the war zone. You're not out of the war zone yet. There's maybe a bomb come down, or a rocket come over at any time. So that bring up that sense of urgency. คือพูดถึงเรื่องคนที่เคยทำจิตให้สงบแล้วแต่ว่าบางครั้งมันก็ยังขี้เกียจให้ได้บางทีก็ไม่ใช่ว่าจะนั่งสมาธิอย่างสม่ำเสมอจะทำให้ประมาทก็ได้หรือคิดว่าเราได้แล้วเรื่องนี้เราก็ทำได้นี่อาตมาก็บอกว่าแท้ที่นั้นต้องพิจารณาว่าตราบใดที่เรายังไม่ถึงขั้นโสดาบันอะไรๆก็ไม่ได้ไม่นอนไว้ใจไม่ได้เสื่อมได้หายไปเลยก็ได้เหมือนอยู่ในเขตสงครามคือตอนนี้อาจจะสงบแต่ไม่รู้อาจจะมีจรวดมาอาจจะมีอะไรมาเมื่อไหร่ก็ได้อาจจะเจ็บไข้ได้ป่วยเป็นปรากฏว่าเป็นมะเร็งเป็นอะไรแล้วเกิดมีปัญหาหรือว่าบริษัทเจ๊งหรือว่าตกงานมันมีสารพัดอย่างที่สามารถเกิดขึ้นแล้วทำลายความสงบของเราถ้ามันยังไม่ถึงขั้นที่เรียกว่าโสดาบันคือมันเสื่อมไม่ได้นั่นการปฏิบัติธรรมของเราแล้วเก่งแค่ไหนดีแค่ไหนนะมันยังเสื่อมได้มันจึงต้องทำต่อ
การวิปัสสนาคือการให้คิดโยมเข้าใจถูกใช่ไหมคะ
คืออะไรนะ
การวิปัสสนาคือการให้คิดโยมเข้าใจถูก
ไม่คิด
ไม่ให้คิดวิปัสสนานะคะ
ใช่
การไม่ให้เราคิดโยมเข้าใจถูก
ไม่คิดก็คือวิปัสสนาไม่เข้าใจทำไมมันจะเป็นวิปัสสนาได้
ถูกไหมเจ้าคะ
ไม่ถูกคือที่จริงมันเป็นเรื่องที่ค่อนข้างจะสลับซับซ้อนเหมือนกับเดิมในพุทธวจนะในคำสอนพุทธเจ้าจริงๆนะคำว่าวิปัสสนาเหมือนก็เป็นการรู้แจ้งเห็นจริงคือมันเป็นผลของการปฏิบัติขั้นสุดท้ายแต่ตอนหลังเนี่ยคำว่าวิปัสสนาถ้าไปใช้ในความหมายว่าเป็นเทคนิคการปฏิบัติก็มีสำนักวิปัสสนาหรือวัดวิปัสสนาเนี่ยคือความหมายของคำวิปัสสนาก็เปลี่ยนอย่างไรก็ตามการพัฒนาปัญญาและการเจริญปัญญาในการทำวิปัสสนาเราก็คือการพิจารณาอนิจจังทุกขังอนัตตานี่ก็คืออารมณ์กรรมฐานในระดับวิปัสสนาคือไตรลักษณ์แต่นี้การพิจารณาไตรลักษณ์เริ่มต้นอาจจะใช้ความคิดก่อนเพื่อจะน้อมนำจิตให้คุ้นเคยกับการพิจารณาอนิจจังทุกขังอนัตตาแต่เมื่อเราทำไปแล้วจิตสงบมันจะน้อมไปในการพิจารณาไตรลักษณ์โดยไม่ต้องคิดแต่คิดก่อนมันเหมือนก็เป็นสร้างนิสัยสร้างความคุ้นเคยสร้างแนวทางบุกเบิกนะฮะเพื่อว่าจิตสงบแล้วไม่คิดมันจะไม่ได้นิ่งหยุดเฉยๆมันก็จะน้อมไปสู่ไตรลักษณ์ต่อไปแต่จิตจะหลุดพ้นก็หลุดพ้นที่ปัญญาก็เกิดจากการทะลุปลุกโปร่งในเรื่องอนิจจังทุกขังอนัตตาถ้าไม่คิดอย่างเดียวนี้มันไม่ได้หลุดพ้นกิเลสมันก็ยังมันเหมือนกับหินทับหญ้าอะไรอย่างเงี้ย
อาจารย์ขอถามต่อไปนะคะต่อจากคุณแพรนะคะเรา
การเป็นโสดาบันเนี่ยผู้ครองเรือนผู้ถือศีล5ก็มีบรรลุเป็นโสดาบันตลอดประวัติศาสตร์ตั้งแต่พุทธกาลเป็นต้นมาอย่างไรก็ตามผู้ที่จะบรรลุได้ก็ต้องมีการทำสมาธิก็ต้องมีการฝึกตนแล้วก็ถ้ามีการเป็นไปได้ก็ควรจะปลีกตัวออกจากสิ่งคุ้นเคยหรือว่าการงานเป็นครั้งคราวถือศีล8แล้วก็มุ่งมั่นต่อการภาวนาโดยเต็มที่จะเป็นเข้าคอร์สไปอยู่ที่วัดศีล5เป็นพื้นฐานที่โดยทั่วไปแต่เพื่อเร่งความเพียรหรือเพื่อจะให้ก็ถือศีล8เป็นครั้งคราวอย่างน้อยทุกวันอุโบสถหรือว่าทุกวันพระเดือนละ4 วันหรือเดือนละ2 วันแล้วก็มีโอกาสปลีกตัวปฏิบัติแบบเข้มข้นเป็นระยะแต่โดยทั่วไปเนี่ยผู้ครองเรือนเนี่ยถ้าเป็นสมาอาชีพไม่วุ่นวายจนเกินไปก็ยังพบไปได้ครับ
Could you please translate that?
Oh yes. So I was asked whether it's possible as a lay person leading a normal life in the world to reach the first level of enlightenment, stream entry. And I said yes. There have been householders, male and female, who have achieved that throughout history from the time of the Buddha to the present day. But so the basic bottom line or sort of foundation that one has to be keeping at least the 5 precepts and having a regular and meditation practice. But I would say also that keeping 8 precepts, maybe on the Upusta day or every one prat, and then at regular intervals going into a monastery or meditation course, so keeping 8 precepts and some intensive meditation at regular intervals to supplement the practice in daily life. I think if you're it's difficult to quantify this, but I would say as a lay meditator leading an ordinary life in the world and you want to make serious progress, minimum of 2 hours meditation a day and maybe more than that. More than that if you can manage. So I knew a man, I don't see him very much, I'm not really sure, I think he may have passed away by now, but he had a successful business and he would come home at night, spend from 6 to 10, he'd spend with his family, children, 10 till 2 he'd sleep, 2 to 6 he'd meditate, and 6 o'clock he'd go up and have a shower and get ready and go to work, and that was his kind of thing.
โยมก่อนค่ะท่านเพราะว่าโยมทำงานกับคนตายตลอดเวลาแล้วอยากจะถามว่าบางทีเราอยู่กับเขาในช่วงเวลาสุดท้ายแล้วเราจะพูดกับเขาหรือบอกกับเขายังไงบ้างคะเพื่อที่จะให้เขาหลับไปให้สบายที่สุด
นี่คือแล้วแต่ว่าเขานับถือศาสนาอะไร
เขาไม่ใช่พุทธฝรั่ง
ใช่คือว่าเขาเป็นศาสนาอะไรหรือเขาเป็นคนไม่มีศาสนา
ส่วนมากที่นี่จะนับถือคริสต์หรือว่าบางคนก็ไม่นับถือ
ใช่ก็เพียงแต่ว่าเราก็ต้องเคารพในความเชื่อของเขาในระดับความคิดแต่ว่าหนึ่งก็คือพยายามดูว่าเขามีอะไรแบบคาใจไหมที่ตกกังวลไหมก็พยายามให้คุยกับเขาเรื่องการจะปล่อยวางเรื่องนี้ เป็นห่วงเรื่องลูกเรื่องร้านเรื่องทรัพย์สมบัติเงินทองเรื่องที่ดินอะไรนะพูดคุยให้เข้าปล่อยวางเพราะว่าเรื่องนี้มันจะทำให้เป็นทุกข์ในวาระสุดท้ายสมมติเราก็ไม่ต้องการแล้วเพื่อให้จิตเบิกบานในวาระสุดท้ายไม่ว่าคนนับถือศาสนาไหนก็ตามวิธีที่ดีที่สุดก็ให้เขาระลึกในสิ่งที่ดีงามที่เขาภาคภูมิใจที่สุดในชีวิตไม่ใช่ว่าเคยทำงานได้เงินเยอะแยะหมายถึงสิ่งที่เป็นบุญเป็นกุศลสิ่งที่เขารู้สึกว่าเป็นความดีของเขาแล้วก็ให้เขาชวนให้เขาคิดให้เขาระลึกอยู่ในสิ่งนั้นพอถ้าทำอย่างนั้นมันจะเกิดปิติแล้วปิตินี้ก็จะเป็นอารมณ์กรรมฐานได้เอาความรู้สึกปราบปลื้มปิติพร้อมระลึกในคุณงามความดีที่เคยทำในอดีตจะเป็นที่พึ่งจะเป็นที่อยู่เป็นวิหารธรรมของเขาในวาระสุดท้าย
ก็คือทำให้เขามีความสุขที่สุด
ใช่มีความสุขโดยการระลึกถึงความดีแต่ว่าถ้าก่อนหน้านั้นถ้ามีอะไรวิตกกังวลหรือยังโกรธใครถ้าคนหรือมันมีอะไรก็จะบอกว่าต้องพยายามให้ปล่อยวางให้ชำระก่อนจะไปนะคือไม่ต้องไปพูดถึงวินไปแต่เกิดหรือจะเพียงแต่ว่าก่อนจะจากโลกนี้ไปจะต้องให้ปล่อยวางในสิ่งที่มันเป็นมลทินอยู่ในใจนะถ้าหากว่าเขาเชื่อในพระผู้เป็นเจ้าว่าก่อนที่จะเข้าเฝ้าพระผู้เป็นเจ้านี้ต้องทำความสะอาดก่อนนะทำจิตใจให้สะอาดก่อนนะคือเราสามารถจะให้คอนเซ็ปต์และให้แนวความคิดในภาษาที่เขาคุ้นเคยและที่เขาจะรับได้แต่สิ่งที่สำคัญคือเข้าโกรธเข้าแค้นใครปล่อยวางซะมันถึงเวลาอีกอย่างหนึ่งนี่บางทีคนจะตายก็อยากปล่อยเต็มที่แล้วแต่เกรงใจครอบครัวตัวครอบครัวจะทุกข์เพราะฉะนั้นไอ้ครอบครัวผู้เป็นลูกเป็นหลานก็ถ้าอยากจะทำบุญกับท่านก็บอกไปได้พ่อไปได้แม่นี่ไม่ต้องเป็นห่วงแล้วนะไปเลยถึงเวลาไม่ต้องเป็นกังวลพวกเรานะไม่ใช่ว่าอยากให้ไปนะอยากให้อยู่แต่มันถึงเวลาแล้วไม่ต้องเกรงใจ
ที่ท่านพูดเมื่อกี้นี่แหละค่ะว่าถ้าเขาอยากจะไปแล้วเราควรจะทำยังไงแต่เขาก็ยังไปไม่ได้เลย
ต้องรอคอย
ต้องให้เขารอคอย
ก็มีคุณยายคนหนึ่งเนี่ยที่เขาจะไปก็ไม่ไปสักทีนะเขาก็รำคาญเขาก็บอกเขาพร้อมแล้วเขาอยากไปมาก็บอกว่ามันเหมือนไปสนามบินนะเครื่องมันดีเลยทำอะไรได้ใจเย็นไปถึงเวลาแล้วถึงเวลาเมื่อไหร่เราก็ขึ้นเครื่อง
แต่ขณะที่เขาอยู่แล้วก็ทรมานค่ะ
ใช่แต่ว่ามันคือเราต้องให้ยาที่ทุกวันนี้ยาแก้ปวดก็มีพวกโมร์ฟีนพวกอะไรแต่ว่าคือเรื่องนี้ถ้าคนที่เชื่อว่าตายแล้วศูนย์มันก็ไม่รู้จะทรมานทำไมใช่ไหมแต่ว่าถ้าพูดในเราก็จะเชื่อว่าตายแล้วไม่ศูนย์สิ่งที่ต้องการก็ให้สูงสุดท้ายของชีวิตมีคุณภาพให้มากที่สุดก็ยังว่าเรื่องการทรมานก็มันอยู่ที่ใจส่วนหนึ่งนะไม่อยู่ที่กายอย่างเดียวการที่กลัวการที่ตัวด้านการที่มีโกรธมั่งน้อยใจมั่งกลัวมั่งอะไรมั่งซึ่งเราก็มีหน้าที่ที่จะคอยอยู่กับเขาให้ข้อคิดให้สติเขาให้อยู่ในปัจจุบันก็ต้องเป็นแค่นี้แหละเราก็ไม่ได้ไปเอาใจไปอยู่กับมันคือถ้าเป็นการเจ็บปวดที่ต้องสอนให้มันเป็นเพื่อนกับมันให้
มันเป็นเพื่อนกันย้ายมันเป็นเธอเป็นศัตรูแล้วก็ให้ความอบอุ่นให้ความรักให้ความเท่าที่จะให้แต่ว่าไอ้การที่ทุกวันนี้อาตมาไม่อยากจะใช้คำว่ากรุณาค่าเพราะว่ามันเป็นคำที่อาตมารังเกียจว่าทำเข้าใจว่าเป็นเรื่องของความกรุณาซึ่งไม่ใช่แต่เราก็ไม่มีหน้าที่แล้วก็ไม่สมควรที่จะทำเช่นนั้นแต่ว่าเราทำถ้าเราเป็นสามีเราเป็นพ่อเราเป็นใครแล้วเราก็ทำทุกสิ่งทุกอย่างที่เราทำได้แต่ว่าการที่จะเร่งให้คนตายบนเวลานี่เราไม่ควรจะทำ
I have a question about faith and belief. Because in Norwegian we don't have a two words. It's just one word.
Yeah.
And you talked about this faith of kind of being absolutely convinced about something, that something is in a certain way, and the kind of feeling that comes with that. But then I'm wondering, the Pali word satta, I think you use faith to. I've heard it used as faith, and my question comes from a comment made by a monk when I explained why I became interested in going to a monastery. I used the word calling almost like in a Christian sense. Like it felt like I couldn't make a narrative, like couldn't make a kind of put it into words in a kind of reasonable kind of reason, that it felt kind of knowing in a deeper way. And he said, that's satta, he said. And I wonder if I practice more, do you think this kind of vague thing is going to become more clear?
Okay, well, as I said, like in like beliefs, most belief systems, you have certain dogmas or things that you have to believe in, and so you have two choices: whether you believe or you don't believe, and that's it. So what happened 2,000 years ago, whether Jesus gave his life or whatever, you either believe that or you don't. Actually, there's no way that you can ever prove whether or not that actually happened. Now, with Buddhism, the faith is in the human potential for enlightenment. And so it's the human potential for abandoning the unwholesome, developing the wholesome, purifying the mind. But it's a very different kind of faith. It's a very different kind of, I can do this is my faith. So this is not a matter of you either believe it or you don't. Actually, quite the opposite. If you truly believe that, then you are compelled to put it to the test. So it's like a hypothesis that you're putting to the test. Now, if you start off in your daily life and you start applying the Buddha's teaching in your daily life, and then you get this feeling, oh yeah, that's just like what the Buddha said. Oh yes, yeah, that's so true. Yeah, that's really. So you get all this kind of yeah, and that's where satta comes from in the Buddhist. It's just this constant putting to the test and finding that the Buddha's teachings stand up to the test of experience again and again and again. That you're confident. So one of the ways, sometimes satta is translated as confidence or trust. You know, we don't really have the word in English. So you have to get the word that's the closest in English, and we have faith. But it's a special kind of faith, I think. It's kind of somewhat different from how it's normally understood.
We call it tillit.
Okay.
Tillit in Norwegian.
that we have a name for it in Norwegian.
Yeah.
It might kind of fit a bit more
Fit
in
into what
between
I'm
all
saying.
these things.
Yeah.
It's close to trust.
That trust, yeah.
Like trusting a teacher.
Yeah. So I refer to this like how you deal with Buddha's teachings that are so way out of experience that you find very difficult to accept, say like about different realms of beings and heaven realms and hell realms, which is really difficult for many Western Buddhists particularly. But so we start off like saying you accept you don't know, first of all. But you can say, well, either I believe or I don't believe, but I don't know. But one of the arguments I would give, or a supporting condition for belief in the heaven realms and hell realms, is that of all the teachings that the Buddha has given that I've been able to put to the test, and 100% success rate. So I have a very strong trust in the wisdom and compassion of the Buddha. So if the Buddha's talking about heaven realms and hell realms, I don't know. I haven't experienced those. But I have a real trust that the Buddha knows what he's talking about. So I can take those on trust. And so people assume, oh, you're a Buddhist, you believe in rebirth and all these different things. Well, that's not really how we conceive it. We have, we're told not to say that we know things that we only believe in, but most Buddhists believe in rebirth, and in my case, one of the compelling arguments is that the body of the Buddha's teachings is like a spectrum from very basic things or to very profound things, then things that almost anybody can put to the test, and things that very few people can put to the test. But overall, what as an individual put to the test, I'm very satisfied with, and so I really have a strong sense of trust that in those areas which I've not yet personally developed, that it's a good. It's like a hypothesis, if you like. I think it's a very strongly established hypothesis